Hi, I'm Jennet Ingle, the 5 Minute Reedmaker. If you're watching this on YouTube, would you go ahead and click subscribe, please? And that way, of course, you always know when I drop a new episode. And it makes it easier for other people to find my channel, learn more about reed making, become happier reed makers and musicians and people. So everybody wins. Thank you so much. So in today's reed repair shop, I have these reeds from an anonymous oboist, and they say, thank you for looking at and working on my reeds. I've been experimenting on using measurements of 64 and 59 instead of 65 and 60 because I still have trouble getting the crow up to a C. I wanted to give myself more room to clip. I'm not sure it's paid off. My crows are not good. The more I scrape, the worse they get. Now, this already I find really interesting, right? Because the crow itself is not actually the goal of reed making, right? Like, we use the crow diagnostically and we like to be able to get up to a C crow, but really the thing that we want is a good reed. And we don't play a reed from crowing position. That's not a thing. So I have certainly had, and I'm sure that you also have had, a perfectly good, legitimate, enjoyable reed that I play on professionally that doesn't have a spectacular crow, and that is totally fine. So that's my first point here. Like, what is it that this oboist is looking for in the crow that they aren't getting, and why? Then the note continues. My bottom octave seems to be flat, and the second and third octaves are not. And this also feels very unsurprising to me. For so many of us, especially if our reed is just a little bit flat, in like overall pitch, not necessarily in the crow, we very subtly, without even noticing, without even really paying attention, we just sort of voice everything up so that we match what's going on around us. And in the second and third octaves, it's easy to do that. The oboe responds really well when we just lip up a little bit or roll in a little tiny bit. But the place where we can't do that is the lowest register of the oboe. The low C, low D, low E, like those notes won't work if we bite them at all. And so we have to be open, we have to be nice and gentle with them. And so we end up hearing the real fundamental pitch of the oboe and the reed in that lowest register. So if you're finding, as this oboist is, that the lowest notes are flat while the middle register and high register are up to pitch or sharp, maybe take a look at what you're doing with your mouth. Is there something that you're doing, maybe even subconsciously, to adjust in that middle register? And could that be caused by the reed crowing a B rather than a C? I've spoken many times about how the pitch of the crow doesn't dictate the actual playing pitch of the instrument, but when we have a B crow, it's very flexible. The reed is flexible and the upper register tends to be a little bit flat, and it's so natural for us to feel the comfort of that B crow and the ease of response, especially down in the low register, and then just like adjust upward with our mouths. And it can become a bad habit, but that's a thing that happens for us often. So I guess before I start working on these reeds and showing y'all what I did here, I just wanted to use those couple of caveats around, does it matter what the crow is? Like, it does, but is it important to the finished reed? Maybe not. And what do we think about when the low register is flat and the upper register is not? Let's dig into these reeds. Let me dig in and see what we've got here, because these are nice reeds. Reed 2 is the one that you liked the best. You said it feels good, it has the best crow with a low crow. And it does, it has a beautiful 2-octave crow, and it is definitely a B. You are exactly as you said, you are at 64 and 59, but your overall length is still 71, which means there's a lot of length in the tip. And it's very tempting to me to just go ahead and clip this up to a C, but I'm going to play it first and see what you've got. Because as I played this, preparing to look at these reeds, I loved it. It's got this low crow, but the heart, the low octave crow comes in so easily with just enough delay. It feels pure, it feels clean, and you've done that by getting the sides and the corners of your tips to really be the thinnest part. There's a lot of purity of those octaves, and it's really lovely. So I like it a ton. And when I play it, the whole thing sits flat, and this is me being very conscious about not using my embouchure to adjust pitch upward. The whole thing sits flat a little bit, and I tend to think that your complaint about your reeds crowing a B and the length of this tip and your complaint about the low register being flat are all related to exactly this. You've set up a really nicely balanced reed, and I'm just going to clip it a tiny bit and see if that brings us up to where we need to be. So I clipped the tiniest bit, and now I'm at a flat C, and I think I might just do one more iota here. Just these tiny clips. You can barely see what I've clipped off. And now I'm at a C. And for me, the whole thing plays in tune. Is it a little bit more resistant than it was before? Yeah, a little bit. The beep is not quite as effortless. The crow comes the tiniest bit slower. And I have to put a little bit more pressure behind the to get the note to speak. But I think I can fix that with just the tiniest touch up in the tip. And this is because, of course, as soon as we clipped, we took away the very, very, very thinnest part of the tip, which you had beautifully crafted. And like, look at the microscopic amount that I'm doing, just working at the very far left, far right, and petting the kitty right up to the corner. I don't want to do any more than this because it's a beautiful reed and it's well constructed. Your slope is beautiful. And you've got everything in place. I just brought it back to a B crow, but I'm going to play it again. And when I relax and don't make adjustments with my mouth, it sure enough is the tiniest bit too flat. These are such subtle things that I'm doing. I scraped the most minuscule amount, and it dropped the crow from a C to a B. I clipped the tiniest bit, it brought the crow back up to the C. And it feels very comfortable for me to play, and even the low register is in tune. So this was your reed number 2. It was the one that you would like the best to begin with. And I'm just going to take a quick second, since you had asked, and check where the middle of your heart is, which is 51.5. Right up at the top of the heart, you're barely under 50. At the tip of the tip, you're at about 10. Like, this is spectacular. Reed is made to order. So I'm ecstatic about it, and I'm going to set it down because I think it's great. Reed number 1. You had said it feels good. It plays closest to B. It's closest to being in tune, even with the B crow, and there's no real low crow. I can get it, but I have to push for it. But the thing that I hear the most in this reed is this little chirp that happens before. It's like a subtone, almost like a whistle, that happens before even the beep engages. And I can feel just that little edge of whistle every time I try to beep it. And it makes me think, any sort of chirp or whistle or subtone like that makes me think that there is a thin place in the tip that is not justified by what is around it. So let me pop a plaque in and see if we can identify that. Looking for my focus. And I think I see it actually right on this side, the lower blade, immediately above your rooftop, above the chimney of the rooftop, right above the peak. I feel like I see a thin spot right here, where maybe your knife just caught a little tiny bit on its way up. Because I don't, well, do I see the exact same thing on this side? Have I just identified a new habit in which you dig out just a little tiny hunk over the west side of the rooftop? So my concern there is that the tip is already very thin. I'm a little worried that I'm not going to be able to make the region west and north of that thin spot thinner than it, which is the solution to that chirp. Before I do that, let me just make sure that I have done the assessment on playing pitch of this reed. I hear the crow is a low B, almost a B flat actually, and the playing pitch is actually less, weirdly, it's less flat than your previous one, your reed number 1, or less out of tune than your reed number 1, which is exactly what you said. Isn't it interesting how even though the crow is such a flat B flat, or a flat B, it doesn't actually impact the playing pitch of the reed. It just impacts the balance of the reed. I want to deal with the chirp first if I can, and then I just want to clip to bring the pitch up and see if we can find it from there. So I'm just going to go with my knife sort of away from that thin spot, trying to make sure that everything further up is thinner than it. Now, I expect I'm going to clip, and it may be that that helps us to get this tip rebalanced as well. I can see how much work you've put into this reed. I see it in the slightly damaged sides of the tip, which, you know, is a thing. Like, as we work at these reeds, eventually they sort of get eroded away a little bit. I still hear the chirp. I'm going to clip and see if I can get closer to it. Well, the crow came up. The chirp is still present, but the crow came up. So let's see what that changes as I play the reed. For me, it's just a little bit wild still, and that wildness is coming from the same problem that the chirp is, right? If it's thin in the middle, then it can't be thinner on the sides. And that's why the purity of your crow was so good on reed number 2, because you already had this slope within the tip going outward toward the sides and toward the corners all the time. And on this reed, just because of the like minuscule damage and divot in the middle of the tip, we don't have that same quality. And, you know, I can see, like I said, where you've worked trying to get the sides to be the thinnest part and eroding them away. If the heart were a little bit higher, if this were a day 2 reed instead of a finished reed, and I had room to work, I might experiment with bringing the rooftop back a little bit just to sort of reset this slope. But I can't really do it because we're already down at 64. So I'm just going to try one more time to go into the tip and make sure that I can get the top of the tip to be thinner than the thin place. Because if we can get that, we can drive the chirp away. And if we can't, then I guess we can't. Good story, huh? I'm just really focusing my knife at the side of the tip, trying to build up to the corners. There we go. Like it's still hinting at being in there. Actually, I think I've got rid of the chirp. I'm gonna clip a little. It's crowing a C. I don't adore this reed. It feels a little bit too easy for me, and I'm going to check your measurements now, especially in the heart, because it feels very easy, so I have a question mark in my mind about that. But I like that we managed to get rid of that chirp. Oh yeah, and look at this. In your heart, on this side, you're at 45, which is wildly different, like 44, even as I move up toward the top of the heart. Very different from your reed number 2, and it's really what is making the difference between these. We're at 43 here, 42. Like, these reeds they look pretty similar. This is reed 2, this is reed 1. But you've managed to leave a lot more substance in the heart on this side, and to make the sides and corners of the tip absolutely the thinnest part. And on this one, you didn't quite have that success. And the heart has gotten itself a little overworked. The tip got itself a little overworked. And that's what's going on with this reed number 1. Okay. Meanwhile, reed number 3 is your least favorite, and it's mine too. It's just less finished than the others. Let me quickly give it another dip. Okay, this is the newest one. It's flat, you say. It doesn't feel like I could project with this reed. It might have a bad leak, and indeed it does. But it feels okay, but I probably wouldn't be able to play it very long. And yeah, it's interesting, right? When people say to me, I can't play this reed for very long, my 2 questions are, is the reed too hard, too resistant, too, like, causing you to have to blow too hard? Or, like in this case, is the reed too flexible and it causes you to have to really hold on and manipulate it very hard? And I think that's what's going on here. Your tip is very long. Your overall length is 71 almost, but the rooftop is below 64 even on this side, and even lower on this side. It's every bit of 63. And so I see that you're pulling it back, trying to get the thing to respond, I guess, or trying to raise the crow. And it's not great. Let me play. Now, to be fair, even though this tip is forever long, you've got a C crow. It's a flat C, but it's there. Which I'm sure that you were able to achieve by bringing that rooftop down. When I crow it, like from crowing position down in here-ish, I feel no leak problem. But when I play at the tip, and when I seal the bottom of it with my fingers, I do feel some leakage up in this area. So that's a concern, but it's not maybe the hugest concern yet, because of course we don't play all the way at the tippy tip of the tip. But there is a leak, and that is a factor. Okay. I feel like we must find a way to clip this reed, and because it's already crowing a C, we have to scrape a little bit to get that C down. And as I'm looking at this reed, even though we're not hearing a manifest chirp like we do on reed number 1, I do see thin places immediately above your heart, there and there and there. It's just a little less finished, and the slope and the gradient within the tip is not nearly as clean as it was on your excellent reed number 2. Did I play this reed yet? I think I didn't. Let me do that quickly. I don't hate the pitch of this reed, and I don't hate the way it feels, but I do think that the length of this tip is holding the reed back from fully vibrating. The opening feels small, and the the opening feels small, and it does feel like I can't do a lot of projection. If I blow hard, let's see what happens. It gets like uglier, but it doesn't get louder in any noticeable way. So what I want to do here is just go in and see if I can improve the slope and the gradient in your tip and clip. That's what I want. Left side. And I'm just using little strokes. I'm just petting the kitty, you know? Moving all the way up to the corner. A lot of bulk on this right side. And on the left, I know there's a thin spot, so I'm trying to make sure that I get the upper part of it thinner than it. And then, but now it's crowing a B, and the length of the tip feels really like obvious in my mouth. That's where the flabbiness is coming from. So I'll clip. And I'm clipping a little more substantially than I did on our earlier reeds, because I think we can afford it. Now it's crowing a flat C. I might even take it up one more notch. Woo! It's crowing a sharp C. Let's see what happens. I don't like it. I don't like it. Let's see what else I'm missing. I don't think you're overwound. We've gotten this reed down to 70, but it still feels very, it feels like a C-sharp crow and reed, in that it's very up. I don't feel like I can reach down to a comfortable pitch floor. And, you know, we deal with, my hypothesis before I played it was that the reed was unstable enough that it was uncomfortable to play on. And what I've done by raising the crow to a sharp C is I've taken it to the other end of that spectrum. The spectrum being flexibility on the one side and stability on the other. Not, it's instability to stability, but flexibility is a goal that we want. So I kind of just want to go in and do the same thing again. Just going to rework the tip again to try to drop the crow. Because it was already a pretty thin tip, so when I scraped, I wasn't able to make the sides and corners that much thinner. And so when I clipped, I'm still right back in, like, not really sloping land. So I'm doing the same again. Oh yeah, found a big thick place right up here. And always as I work, I'm keeping my knife away from the middle of the reed. I'm just focusing at the outsides of that tip. Okay. It's crowing a C. But you know, the leak has almost completely vanished. I don't know why that is, but it feels better. I don't know if there was something about the unevenness of the tip that was causing it to pull apart a little bit up in that area. Okay, so now I feel like we've got response at the tip, but the reed still feels very held back. Now I'm going to pull out my micrometer and see what you've got going on in this heart. 52 on this side. And 52, 54 over on this side. I feel like now that we've got the tip, the slope in the tip pretty solid, I'm going to very carefully polish the heart just a little bit and see if we can find some low vibrations in there. So I don't really think there was that much wrong with this reed. It just wasn't really quite finished. But I hope that this is feeling helpful. Your heart's very short because of the measurements that you've decided to construct this reed at, but it's not inherently a problem. And it was smart of you to leave it really thick to compensate for the shortness. I hope that I haven't just wrecked it by thinning the heart. We'll find out. Oh yeah, it's a nice B crow. But like, I say nice, but it's a purer crow than we've had before from this reed. We're getting the octaves nice and cleanly. They have a nice dark sound. And when I clipped it, it came to a C. Okay, up at the very top, if I come to the tip of the reed when I'm playing, I do feel a little bit of leakage right in there. And that could have been caused, something that bothers me about. No, I feel like the overlap is backward a little bit. So I'm feeling I'm what's happening here? I don't know if this was just a little bit of a funky piece of shaped cane, really, because it looks like there's a clean overlap here, but by the time we get to the top, there's no more overlap. And on this side, yeah, I think this is maybe the fundamental problem with this reed is a winding problem, and it's so subtle. I've been squinting at it this whole time and not seeing it, but as I get really close, I feel like I see the overlap on the left, which is what I would expect from a right-handed winder. And over on this side, it's very subtle, but if anything, I feel like I see the overlap. Sorry, where's my focus? There. I feel like I see that overlap here. So it's almost as though it's perfectly aligned here and then left overlapped on this side. And as you get up toward the top, come on, where's my focus? Can't you see that there's a little overlap on this side too? So somehow the cane has caused itself to be, the lower blade is visible right there, and it's also visible right there. So somewhere there's a crossing, there's an inconsistency in that wind, which I think is probably causing your leak, and it's also causing your opening to be just like the tiniest bit smiley. You can see that the upper blade here where my index finger is a little bit flat, and the lower has a little bit more of a smile to it. That's because this blade is sort of engulfing this one and causing it to want to be open. So, like, is that fatal? Not necessarily, but it's not ideal. But I feel like this reed came a long way from where it was. And I got there by thinning the sides and corners of the tip and by very gently rebalancing the heart. And then clipping, clipping, clipping. This has been a Reed Repair Shop episode. If you, too, are interested in having your reeds looked at by me and analyzed and worked on and sent back, hopefully improved, but certainly discussed, you can find out information about that on my website, jennetingle.com, which is also, of course, where you could order reeds or cane, or my upcoming book, or reach out to me with questions that I might answer on a future 5-Minute Reedmaker episode. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.